the pelvic bowl is this source of light, and we've turned it into a pool of darkness and associated it with shame and sin and moved more and more up into the head as far from it as we can get. And it's a horror to me how our culture directs our neurology in that way. The more muscle you had, the more taxing it would be on the heart and the lungs. Every one of those contentions is erroneous, has been disproven. To take one, the purpose of exercise is to strengthen the heart and the lungs.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Beitz. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. My guest today is Philip Shepherd, a recognised leader in the global embodiment movement, whose work speaks directly to how intuition lives in the body. He's the founder of the Embodied present process, which helps people reconnect the thinking mind with the deep, calm intelligence of the body, a connection many men have been taught to override or ignore. Philip's the author of Radical Wholeness and New Self, New World, and co-author of Deep Fitness. His work explores how modern culture's disembodiment cuts us off from the intuitive guidance and how reclaiming bodily presence restores clarity, discernment, and grounded decision-making. His own journey includes extensive solo travel as a teenager, classical theatre training, and decades of creative and embodied inquiry. Through his writing, teaching, and facilitation, Philip invites us to rediscover intuition, not as something mystical, but as a practical, lived intelligence that becomes available when we learn to listen from the inside out. Philip, welcome to the podcast.
It's such a pleasure to be here, Doug. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm honoured to have you. And the thing I'd like to start our conversation with is your cycling trip. I'd like you to tell us about it, but I have a question that hopefully you can answer at the beginning, middle, or end of the story. I'm curious, was this extensive bicycle journey, as we're about to hear, a self-conducted rite of passage? Was it you declaring to the world when it was over, I'd passed from boyhood to manhood?
Let me answer that first, and then in retrospect, it was that, but it wasn't at the time. Just to set the context, I graduated high school. I had been accepted to study physics at the University of Toronto. And then there was this other possibility of going to Japan to study classical Japanese no theater, this 650-year-old tradition. And I had seen a no play and had been devastated by it. It was the most powerful theatrical experience I'd ever encountered. I was dissolved in tears at the beauty of it. And somehow the mystery of no theater I found more compelling than the mysteries of quantum mechanics. So I didn't have any money. I was 18 at the time. So I went to England and bought a bicycle and headed off. And it wasn't quite that cavalier, because there was something deeper. I was in a rage as a teenager at the ways in which my being was constrained, shaped, my language, my habits of thinking, my entire culture was conspiring to make me feel less alive. And I could feel the pressures. It's not just of conformity because you habituate to the ocean in which you swim. So the very things I was fighting against, the very constraints to my own freedom, were not exterior. They lived within me and were being reinforced by my culture. So, I just had a feeling that if I just went to university, sort of the whole of my life is laid out. You go to university and, graduate and get married and have a job and get kids and blah, it's all, and it didn't feel like the most alive fork in the road to take. The most alive fork in the road to take was this thing of getting a bicycle and getting on it and starting off and heading off for Japan. I was out of the country for 2 years and traveled through Europe and the Middle East and India and Japan. And when I came back home, I had gained the ability to ask questions of the culture that was so familiar to come back into, and at the same time was so bizarre. I had experienced, every culture is sort of a story about what it means to be human. And I'd been through so many different stories of what it means to be human. And so I came back able to question what had hitherto appeared to be normal. And that's what I was after. And I actually, before I left, I wrote down on a little piece of paper 3 sort of goals. And one of those goals, the way I phrased it, was break the culture dam. I felt my life dammed in by the patterns and habits and assumptions of my culture. So that began my journey. It liberated me to look at my culture as though from the outside.
So what countries did you venture through? And I guess you spent a reasonable amount of time in them as you were cycling. You weren't like
wasn't speeding through them, no.
No. Yeah, what route did you take?
Oh, it was this kind of peculiar route. From England to France to Italy, and then down the coast of what was then Yugoslavia. And then I ran into Albania, and there was a little ferry that went over to Bari back in the south of Italy, and down to Brindisi and back over to Corfu and through Greece. And I really wanted to see some of the islands. So I got a ferry to Cyprus and traveled around Cyprus for a bit, and then got on a little antediluvian wooden cargo boat with a crew of 3 called the Sessilalame, which I thought was hilarious. And you had to pump it. It was an Arab crew, and they had to pump it out like every 4 hours or it would start to sink. It was carrying a cargo of peanuts and potatoes. And that got me from Cyprus. I think I left from Limassol to Beirut. And then I cycled through Lebanon and Syria and Iraq and some of Iran. But my planning was less than ideal. It was winter, and the mountains were filled with snow. So I got to Tehran and flew to New Delhi and cycled through India and applied to go through China, but this was 1972. They weren't all that keen to have me go in. I couldn't go through Burma, so I had to go back to New Delhi, and I flew to Hong Kong and to Osaka, and then cycled through Japan to Tokyo.
Yeah. Have you heard of the Iceman, Wim Hof?
Yeah.
Yeah. He and his brother, when they were 17 and 19 or something like that, did something like that. You know, he was up in the Netherlands, wherever, and they bought bicycles, and they sort of got like they made themselves a little food hamper, and I can't remember what he put in it, but it was enough food for like a week or two. And off they went, and they headed off all over Europe, and for a year or two, same sort of thing. And there was two of them at least, and off they went and cycled away. Yeah, like what a tremendous thing to do. Yeah.
You feel the world in such a special way on a bicycle.
Yeah.
You're wide open to it. It's so different from being in a car, you know.
Oh, yeah. Like I know when I just even where we live out rural, there's so much of nature to see. But I'm driving 95% of the time, so I don't get to see it so much because of that. And the odd time when I'm passenger, I'm like, oh, look at that! I want to stop, but we've got windy, narrow roads, and there's nowhere to stop to get out. And there's sometimes, you know, you'd be just as the sun's coming up, and you get this lot, and you want to stop and take a photo, you can't. But to be on a bicycle, you could lap it out.
You smell it, you hear it, you're permeated by it.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Awesome story. So for the men listening out there, like just think back as a teenager if we'd have taken an adventure like that. That was amazing.
And just to say, sorry, I honestly didn't fully expect to come back alive. You know, I wasn't naive in that way. I mean, how do you cycle through the Middle East thinking you'll be perfectly fine? I knew with a certainty that if I didn't go, some part of me would die, that it was too important.
Yeah. You'd start living a life of quiet desperation. You'd feel dead inside, and
a life of organized inadequacy.
Yeah.
A phrase from Joseph Campbell's.
Yeah. And I don't mean to criticize the education system, but I managed to escape it at 15. And Mum said to me, I said, Mum, I've finished with school. I don't want to go anymore. And she said, well, you're not sitting at home doing nothing. If you don't, you know, in the summer break, she goes, if you go and get a job, a proper job, you can leave school. But if not, get yourself back to school. And 2 weeks before school finished, one of the teachers called me off parade and said, come over here. Would you like to become an apprentice locksmith? And I'm like, the hell's that? Like, I don't know. I guess. So he said, well, the company down the road's run the school and they want us to send some kids down for an interview. And so off I went and I got the job. But I was talking with my son the other day. One of my 4 boys, he's 38, and he's been with his company 10 years, and his boss is in his sort of at least mid-60s and is ready to hand the company over. And he's dubbed my son the new CEO on a 3-year basis. Like, over the next 3 years, you are training, you're going to be doing everything, and at the end of it, you will be the boss. And he went into the annual executive meeting the other day, which he now has to run. And he goes, Dad, because same thing, he finished after year 11 at school. He goes, I felt such imposter syndrome, because he goes, like, all the executives in this meeting, you know, like there's probably 24 people in the meeting. He goes, you want to see their resumes like that? I said to him, mate, just in my Aussie colloquialism, I said, you think they're educated? They are a room, because he's talked to me about them. I said, and it's not nothing different with this group of men than any other. I said, they're just a bunch of galahs. And we have, like, out of my lawn right now, there'll be galahs feeding. And it's just a typical thing around here. And I said, I wasn't saying it derogatory, because it was just like, son, you and I are galahs. You know, we're just all whatever we are. And the more education we go and get, the more trapped we get into a system, and the less alive we are. So I feel privileged that at 15, I went and started educating myself differently in a different system. And I constantly educate myself. I love education, but I don't like the constraints of the system that can potentially, as make parts of you die. So yeah.
There's an interesting story. Albert Einstein, having graduated university, applied to become a professor and teach, and was rejected. No one wanted him. So he ended up working in a patent office. And he later said that if he'd gone into academia, he didn't think he would have come up with his revolutionary theory of relativity and all else that happened in that amazing year, because his thinking would have been shaped by the assumptions and values of academia. Outside of academia, he was free to encounter it in his own way without being pointed towards a particular bias. And I've thought of that, and I thought, well, maybe that fork in the road that took me off on my bike rather than to university, I felt it at the time, allowed me to see things and think about things in a way that was deeply personal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm glad you've covered that. Something else I want to talk to you now is when I was a young boy, my father would take me fishing, and we'd fish from the bank of the river or in an anchored boat, not moving. And he taught me, you'd feel the fish on the line, you physically feel it on your fingers. It's starting to nibble on the bait. When I was 8, he took me with my grandfather one day in the boat with a motor on, and we started trolling up and down the river. And now I've got this little silver lure on with 3 hooks on the end, and it's constantly pulling, like as we go, because we're moving, and the tip of my rod keeps bouncing, and I'm going, Dad, like, I think I've got a fish. And he goes, no, you haven't. It's just the movement of the boat. And I said, well, how will I ever know when there's a fish on? And his reply, I'm hoping that you can give me some answer to of what he meant. Because when I was 8, I had no idea what he meant. He said, Doug, you'll feel it. You'll know. You'll feel it in your water. And I'm like, I didn't ask any questions after that. I was like, okay. And we did catch some fish that day. It became quite obvious. We got a massive pull on it, and it was like, But I've talked to 1 or 2 other people about that statement. And I'm curious, with your extensive studies of embodiment and how we feel things in the body, etc., does that sentence make any sense to you? You'll feel it in your water.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about the bladder, presumably, that's what comes up for me.
I guess, I don't know.
And the bladder's in the pelvic bowl, right. and the deepest ancestral knowing that we possess is in the body, and for me, it's centered in the pelvic bowl. So we think the brain in the head is almighty, and it's a recent addition to our intelligence. The brain, first appeared on the evolutionary ladder 521 million years ago. Embodied intelligence predates that by 3 billion years. And, there is embodied intelligence in an amoeba that can find nourishment and avoid toxins and make decisions. Our embodied intelligence feels the world, feels the present, and recognizes what the conscious mind struggles to take hold of. So that's how it lands for me. is that knowing deep in the pelvic bowl, that feeling what is on the other end of your fishing rod. There's a Unangan elder. The Unangan nation lives on the islands that trail off Alaska towards Russia, and it's a seafaring nation, and they have a relationship with sea lions that is sacred in the way that the Plains Indians have a relationship with the bison, the buffalo. And he talks about, as a young boy, going to sit with the hunters, and they would be at the edge of the sea on these basalt rocks, sitting in silence, not daydreaming, just absolutely attuning. And they could be there for hours and hours. And then one of them would say, sea lion coming, and all the heads would turn and look in the same direction. And the sea lion might be 5 or 10 miles offshore, but they could feel its presence. And Ilarion Merkuliev, the name of the Unangan elder, speaks about acquiring that ability himself. And he could, when he was fishing and he caught a fish, he knew what species it was and how big it was and what color it was. You know, he could feel. So what we feel through the body, which we've so deeply come to mistrust, is our most reliable intelligence. The body feels the present.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of a story. We used to live on a little Pacific island just north of the equator between Guam and Hawaii, but a little bit closer to Guam than Hawaii. And living out there, we got to know people on other island chains around that way. And one of my sons traveled, I think, I'd have to clarify it with him, but I think it was to Kiribati, which is just south of the equator out there. And he was there for a week or so, and he got talking to some of the locals, and they were telling him stories. And, you know, these are fairly isolated islands, and there's plenty of, you know, Europeans have been through there, but they do hold fast onto their traditional stories. And he was told one day there was a drought for an extensive time, and there was a gross lack of food on the island, and the people were really hungry. And some of the elders were able to call the dolphins in. And the dolphins came in and sacrificed their lives, like come into the shallows for the men to be able to take them as food. And I said to him, like, do you really think this is, you know, probably 7 or 8 years ago, he was telling me, and he goes, Dad, I've got a video of it. And I've watched the video. And it's taken by locals because you can hear them talking in the background. And it's just, you know, it's in a language I can't understand. And it's not a high quality video. And it's not new. It's not like it's an AI produced thing. It's an old video. And in the shallow water that's like 1 to 3 feet deep, there are a minimum of dozens and dozens of dolphins and dozens of children, all just walking around with them. And the majority of the dolphins are on their back with their fins, just pectoral fins just sitting up on there. And they've just come in from the ocean and just given their lives up to feed these people. And apparently it happens every maybe 30 years or so when there's just these mass, you know, with the cycles of nature and there's not much food on the island, and they're able to have a symbiotic relationship. It's all whatever that might be the right term for it. These dolphins are willing to accept the call and come on in and feed the people. Yeah, it's phenomenal. So it's these connections in nature are like, yeah. You wouldn't go to normal university and get taught that.
In fact, you'd likely be taught that it's impossible.
Yeah, it didn't happen. There was something else occurred. The dolphins were poisoned, or they were just beaching themselves, and the people happened to be there. And yeah, exactly. So, I love this. Later.
I was just going to say, this attunement to nature, it's how we have survived, for the first 95% of our evolutionary history. You go to indigenous cultures and they feel medicines that plants are offering. And we think, oh no, traditional medicines, over hundreds of years, trial and error. Of course, they figure out this is absurd trial and error. It's like, John has a headache. What plants haven't we tried for a headache? Oh, here's one. John, eat this. Oh no, John died. Does anyone else have a headache? Because we've got another 300 plants to try. This is insane, But our embodied intelligence has been so diminished by this supervisor in the head that wants to take charge of everything, that we no longer give credence to what indigenous cultures rely on for their existence.
Mm. Yeah, I have heard stories many years ago too that apparently the eye, like if you were lost in the jungle for a week or two and you were starting to get rather hungry, that your eye starts to adjust itself and it's very attracted to things that your body needs. If you have a lack of magnesium or iodine or iron or whatever in your body because of the poor diet you've just experienced, your eye will seek out things that have that in it. And apparently scientists have studied that sort of stuff, and they, just as you said, like it's our bodies attuned to, and we don't go and try the 15 different berries. We are able to know which one is, the thing, as long as we're tuned in. And I'm sure there's plenty of people have eaten poisonous things and died who weren't attuned in. I know that sort of thing happens. But like you say, if we take that primal, that ancient inner knowing and listen to it. Yeah. So the term the gut brain, is that connected to the pelvic floor that you talk about so often? Or are they different?
Well, the gut brain, so there's the brain in the head, there's the brain in the heart. There's so much neurological tissue it's recognized as a brain. And there is another brain that runs all through the gastrointestinal tract. So, the stomach, the bowels, all of that is, again, got so much neurological tissue. It makes decisions, it perceives, it it tells what is part of the body and what isn't, what belongs to it and what doesn't. It does everything a brain does, but without being centralized the way the brain in the head is. It's diffuse, and I think it's got other sensitivities as well. I mean, it is in the pelvic floor, in the pelvic bowl, that I most keenly perceive the world. There's a culture, the Anglo-Ewe culture, that I write about in my book, Radical Wholeness, and they have a word, Sessilalame, that means feel at flesh inside. They don't have a word for sense. They have Sessilalame. And they'll say, you can hear with the ear, but it's not real hearing. Real hearing happens through the body. You can see with the eye, but real seeing happens to the body. And from the pelvic bowl, I can feel the sounds of the world. I can feel the colors of the world in a way that is intimate and ravishing and non-personal and absolutely clear. So, so, I'm reluctant to say it is the gut brain that is doing that, but certainly the body has a landscape to its intelligence, and to drop down through that landscape eventually to the pelvic bowl, for me, is to come to your center. And when you rest in your center and feel the world from there, you are feeling the world in an unmediated way. The head always wants to jump in and interpret and guide and judge, and to get clear of that and just feel the world from that depth of the body is something that I'm sure is taken for granted in every indigenous culture. They're so close to the earth. They're so sensitized to the natural world. They are grounded cultures already.
Mm. So when did you start to get this deep understanding of the pelvic bowl? And how, like for the men listening, because I know when I first started to hear you talk about it, I'm like, what does he mean? And so I listen, and you talk about it a lot. It, so for the men listening, if they're thinking, what does Philip mean by this feeling things in your pelvic bowl, understanding, feeling colors? When did that start to turn on for you, or was it always been like that? And how would you recommend someone start to develop that sensitivity, that connection?
I spoke of the rage I felt as a teenager, which is what really prompted me to leave home. The center of that rage was on the pelvic floor at the perineum. I felt that. I felt my core down there so clearly. I gave it, I named it Adamus, just a word that the Greek word from which we get the word diamond, because it felt unextinguishable. And it when I speak of it as a rage, it was at the same time a joy. And I feel that realm of the pelvic bowl as the center of my being, just as I feel the realm of the head as the center of my thinking. So in the head, I can consciously think. In the pelvic bowl, I can consciously be. And that is such a nourishing, easeful experience. And we have been directed by our culture, out of the pelvic bowl, out of the body, up into the head. And in being so misdirected, we live in the head and wonder why our lives feel off balance. We've lost our center. We've lost our deepest sense of truth. And, how to recover that? I mean, to me, one of the primary ways in which we've been stripped of our own resourcefulness is that the pelvic floor tends to get locked in tension. The pelvic bowl is this source of light, and we've turned it into a pool of darkness and associated it with shame and sin and moved more and more up into the head, as far from it as we can get. And it's a horror to me how our culture directs our neurology in that way. The pelvic floor is actually a diaphragm in the body. So there's the thoracic diaphragm and the pelvic floor, and they move in tandem together. But the pelvic floor gets locked up in tension. The thoracic diaphragm is going like this, and it's fighting the pelvic floor. So one of the most potent ways of coming back in touch with the life of the pelvic bowl is to feel the pelvic floor as gently as you can. And on the in-breath, it's like if you imagine there's a balloon in the pelvic bowl and it's almost inflated to fill the pelvic bowl. But then with the in-breath, that balloon opens a little bit more. And then with the out-breath, it comes back. And just to feel that balloon in the pelvic bowl. Now, if you feel the back of the balloon, you'll feel maybe the lower back slightly moving with the breath. If you feel the hips, you feel the hips as that balloon fills with breath, gently float open just slightly, but there's movement there. And they come back. And the lower belly, similarly. And the bottom of the balloon is the pelvic floor. And as the balloon fills with air, as you really pay close attention to that, imagining it happening, the pelvic floor, the bottom of the balloon, drops down on the in-breath and releases on the out-breath. And to feel that happening within your body is to be bringing sensation to what I experience as the ground of my being. So when I drop into myself, I land on the pelvic floor. That is the ground of my being. And without that aliveness in the pelvic floor, you have no place to land in yourself. Where are you going to land? And so we revert back up into the head to truly connect with the fluctuations of the present, to feel the world around you in a way that is almost animalistic in its purity. That's made possible by that descent through the body, which brings us to rest on the pelvic floor.
Wow. Thank you for explaining it like that. I'm going to listen to this several times, this little part right now, because as soon as you say the word pelvic, I picture bones. And and I'm like, oh, where? And in the last few days, I've actually gone and I've done a search for pelvic floor image, and I've sort of been looking and studying, and I've just starting to realize that the base of it is muscle in different, and it's not bone. And I'm just, yeah. So and now you're explaining it like this, it's very helpful. And then also too, I've recently done, I've only done it once, but on your website, your free 5-minute snow globe meditation, and it was pretty crazy when I did that. And it goes for 5 minutes, and you do give a 1.5 minute introduction. So it's not this long process, but and you don't suggest to close your eyes, but after a bit I did, and I closed my eyes, and I'm just sitting there at the kitchen bench on my bar stool, listening to it while my wife's in the background watching something on TV. And because I've got these headphones on, so I can't hear anything. And when it was over and I opened my eyes, all the colors in the room were a lot more subtle. They weren't more vibrant, they were more subtle. And it was, I had I don't know, very much an awareness that things had changed in those 3.5 minutes I had my eyes closed. It was like, oh, wow. I didn't have any amazing sensations in my body or anything like that, but it was just like, wow, that was very effective. Like, it was quite amazing, like imagining all the little snowflakes from the snow globe, settling and resting back down on my pelvic floor. Yeah. And so I would encourage people listening, in the show notes, we'll have links to Philip's things, and in there's things you can download from his website, and this one's free, just a little 5-minute process. So I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and what that brings up for me is this choice that we are not aware of in our lives. That you can live in a world of ideas, or you can live in a world of energy. We are trained to live in a world of ideas, and we want to know everything. And as a result, I can look around me. I know what everything is. There's nothing I can see that I can't tell you what it is. So then, if I know what it is, why would I bother to feel it? What's the point? But then you realize, actually, ideas are frozen energy. And there is no frozen energy anywhere in the world. All energy is moving. And everything around me is in flow. And to feel the body not as a machine, but as a field of energy, and to feel the world around me as a field of energy, now I can acquire choice in regards to that energy, such as happens with the snow globe. I can feel my body's energy kind of swirling around in these flakes and then let it settle and feel it drifting down and coming to rest. And if I'm stuck in a world of ideas, that becomes impossible. I'm stuck up in the head, and I will never experience that gentle settling into the present.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's I've been the podcast's about helping men develop their intuition, and I haven't started it because have ever been so good or clever at being intuitive. It's quite been the opposite. It's a journey for me of discovery, like surrounding myself with people like you and all the other men I've interviewed, and women too, but it's mostly men, to learn these things. And I thank you so much for that. You've explained things today very differently than I've ever heard things before. Doesn't mean I haven't heard them in a similar way, but today I've heard things in a different way again that helps just lock in another piece of information into this big puzzle that life presents us. And thank you for that.
Yeah, I might add one other thing in terms of intuition. My body, I feel as a resonator. It's like a singing bowl, like a singing bowl, and the present is going like this, and it is singing to the present. It's resonating to the present. What happens in our culture is we have all these concerns and plans and doubts and regrets and dislikes and ideas, and we fill the resonator. It becomes consolidated. So like the present is still going like this, but we don't feel it.
And for those who aren't watching on YouTube, Philip has a singing bowl in his hand. He gave it a little ding before, you heard it resonate. Now he's put all sorts of stuff in the bowl, and the tapping was him tapping it, and the whole resonance of the bowl's gone. Now it's just a tapping noise. It's not singing to us. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you cannot feel the present because the body has lost its spaciousness, then all you can do is sit in your head and guide yourself. And you are deaf, dumb, and blind to intuition, because intuition happens through the body. So one of the necessary preconditions to dropping into that other way of knowing the world is to feel where energy is locked in the body, where there are shadows in the body, and you integrate those. You give them love, which is counterintuitive, because we demonize these stuck energies in the body because they hurt and they're reactive and they're like orphans. We've orphaned these energies. For whatever reason, we were unable to welcome them into the core of our being, and so we've orphaned them. And how do you bring an orphan home? You give it your unconditional acceptance. You see it and feel it as clearly as you can. You love it. And those energies then can be brought back down. Like literally, I don't know how nonsensical it sounds, but literally you can feel a stuck energy and give it love and bring it down through the body into the pelvic bowl, onto the pelvic floor, onto the perineum, and feel it integrate.
Wow. And I have, years ago, I read a book by a lady called Eileen McCusack, I think is how you pronounce her name. And she uses tuning forks to locate stuck energy in the body. And then she continues to use the tuning fork to release the stuck energy, like to bring because when she strikes the fork where there's stuck energy, it's dissonance, not, it's not a pleasant sound. And so that totally makes sense to me. The energy in the body that's been sitting there for days or months or decades, and being allowed to flow. And like she says, she doesn't take the energy away or anything like that. It just now rejoins the natural flow of energy through the body. It's part of you, and she's been able to assist in that way. That makes sense. And just it's not good energy or bad energy. It's just energy, and it's your energy, and it wants to rejoin the flow. And
Yeah.
So,
and there's only one route towards wholeness, which is integration. And anything that's trying to demonize or overcome or get rid of or shut to one side is not a path to wholeness. It's only when you can welcome all those energies and allow them to harmonize like a starling joining a murmuration. That's the only route I know that brings us into wholeness.
It's amazing. Now, I'm probably halfway through listening to Radical Wholeness, but a book that I've got that I want to get of yours, and I think I need to get the paperback or the hardcover or whatever, is the Big Fit book. I'm curious with that. I've only heard you talk about it once, and a little over a year ago, probably 18 months ago, I decided to learn to swim and start. So I've gone to the local aquatic center with the Olympic swimming pools, and I swim 3 days a week now. But there's a gymnasium attached to it. So I sort of then, probably 6 months after swimming, my son convinced me to start going to the gym, which I haven't done since I was 19 when I first became a professional firefighter. I used to go to the gym then, and in between, I've never gone to the gym since. But anyway, for the last year, I go along. My son's put a little app on my phone, and because he's a personal trainer as well, but he doesn't go to this gym. He's at a different gym. So he adjusts my little program every couple of months for me. And I, go to the gym next time. And it's like, oh, all my exercises have changed, so off I go. But I'm curious now, this book you've co-authored, I'm curious to hear the exercise methods and things, and what's the theory behind it all.
I would be delighted to share that. So our understanding of fitness was shaped largely by a book that was published in 1968 called Aerobics by an author called Kenneth Cooper, who was like the medical doctor that advised NASA and trained the astronauts and advisor to the Surgeon General in the United States. And the book put forward 4 main contentions that are with us still. And number 1 is the purpose of exercise is to strengthen the heart and the lungs. Number 2, the most important exercise is cardio, because for obvious reasons, it strengthens the heart and lungs. Number 3, the more you do, the better. And he had this point system where you walk this far, swim this far, cycle this far, you gather your points and see how many points you have at the end of the week. And the more points, the better. And number 4, he discouraged weight training because he felt it would put more load on the heart. The more muscle you had, the more taxing it would be on the heart and the lungs. Every one of those contentions is erroneous. has been disproven. To take one, the purpose of exercise is to strengthen the heart and the lungs. So an experiment was done, or a study was done, with men. They put on ergometers, cycling, stationary cycling, and they measured their VO2 max at the beginning, which is the ability of the body to metabolize oxygen. And then they did the study. They, trained 3 or 4 times a week over a couple of months and measured the VO2 max at the end. But what made this study really intriguing is that they were only cycling with one leg. So they measured both legs VO2 max at the beginning, and then just trained with one leg over the however many months, and then they measured it again. And the leg that had been trained, the VO2 max had gone way higher, by, I think my memory is something like 21% or something. The leg that hadn't been trained, no change in the ability to metabolize oxygen. So the adaptation that took place wasn't in the heart or the lungs, where it would have showed up in the other leg. It was in the muscle itself. But there's research that's been done in the last 15 years, say, that has completely changed the landscape of what fitness is, why muscle matters. So, for example, sarcopenia was identified. Sarcopenia is the wasting of muscle with age. And it just tends to happen as you get older. You tend to lose muscle mass. But sarcopenia is associated with every chronic disease of aging. Like the osteoporosis and heart disease, and there are cancers that are associated with aging. Every one of them is associated with sarcopenia. Another thing that they found out was that, exercise in general has this global effect on our health. It sort of gives a boost to every system in the body. And why? And they trying to pin this down, and then they discovered myokines. And myokines, it's a messenger molecule that is created when muscle works. And the stronger a muscle is, and the more intensely it works, the more myokines are produced. And there are like over 1,000 different kinds of myokines that go through the body and promote, bone mineral density and mental acuity and the immune system and capillarization, everything. So muscle, it turns out, is the foundation of our metabolic health. Another thing that has been discovered is that there is a specific sort of workout that you can do for half an hour once a week that will get you stronger and stronger and stronger. And this is the workout that the book describes. The book is called Deep Fitness. The workout is called Mindful Strength Training to Failure. And what it involves, if you're on a machine that's like a chest press, you're moving the weight slowly back and forth. You're not counting reps. You're just present to this, moving it back and forth until you can't lift it. And then you can't even hold it. And all by itself, it comes down despite your best effort. So you've reached momentary failure with that muscle. And the body gets the message that the environment has presented challenges that we're not strong enough to meet. And it rallies its resources to remodel that muscle so it's stronger the next time. Now, that journey to failure only takes 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's very brief. If you're on a machine, what you're doing is you've got a stopwatch. So you're not counting reps, but how long can I keep going? And if you go much over 2 minutes, you increase the weight a little bit. If you're under 1.5 minutes, you decrease the weight a little bit. And you find that you come back to that once a week. And because it only takes 1.5 to 2 minutes, in half an hour, you can take all the major muscle groups of the body to momentary failure. And then they need to recover. So this idea of Kenneth Cooper that the more points, the better. No, his friend James Fix dropped dead of a heart attack at 42? He was the guy who wrote the book on running. And he ran like 15 miles every day or something, just insane. But the body is worn out. If you take a muscle to failure, what you've done is you've stressed the muscle in a way that it now has to heal. So for the next 2 or 3 days, you don't take the muscle to failure again. It's remodeling. Now, I still ride my bike, I play tennis, but I don't take a muscle to failure. And then, after 2 or 3 days, you can do another workout. So I actually do 2 workouts every week, but the workouts are different. They're using different muscles, different machines. And I'm still getting stronger. So I've been doing it for 7.5 years. And my gains are, at this point, incremental. Like once in a while, I'll have to raise the weight because the time has climbed up above 2 minutes and I have to increase the weight. But, 30 years ago, if I'd imagined myself at the age of 72, and, my hope would have been, I hope I'm not getting too weak too fast. And here I am getting stronger. And it's like a lifeline for me. It's been a godsend to my life to discover this workout.
Yeah, I know at the end of my workouts, if I do a new personal best, when I hit the little, save button on the app, it does a little, fist pump sort of thing. And it goes, you set a new record today. And the record's, 1.2% more of this, it's tiny, but, it's something. And it's like, and my son wears this, he's got this particular Australian brand of gym wear that he gets sent to him because he was on Instagram with all his muscles and stuff. And their motto is 1% better every day, which sounds not much, but it's, you imagine if you were 1% better every day for 7 years, like that's, you'd be Mr. Universe now. Like it's in the beginning, it's only a tiny bit, but we aim to just occasionally, every so often get a bit better with it. Yeah, that's and I've been amazed. My wife had a journey a few years ago with osteoporosis, and so we've become quite aware of lifting heavy weight. And she's got an exercise physiologist she's been going to for the last year, and she had her birthday yesterday. She's now the same age as me, and we're both fitter and stronger than we've ever been. In our early 60s. So it's just through going to the gym and lifting heavy weights. And because she's got a trainer, he pushes her. She twice a week she comes home quite stiff, and she's like, "Oh boy," he's only young. He's very educated. He's probably mid-20s, but he's his goal actually is to get away from doing that and move into nursing homes and get them exercising in nursing homes. He loves the older people and understands their needs. So, yeah.
And the older you are, the more important it is to do resistance training to get stronger and stronger.
Yeah, it's challenging right now. My dad passed a couple of years ago, 92, and he was a stubborn bugger. In the end, he did have a walking frame, like a wheel walking frame, but that was probably for the last 6 weeks of his life. He should have had that 2 years before, but before that he had a 4-pronged walking stick, and then before that he had just a normal walking stick. Well, when he first relented and went to the walking stick was when he needed the wheel walker. He was just. But my mum's now in the nursing home. She's 94, and physically she's fine. It's just her memory's gone. And, she can remember everything when she was a kid, sort of thing. And Yeah, and occasionally, but I walk in the room, she still remembers my name, which was like, she's 94, but she understands it because we walk down the hall, we go to the coffee shop, and she'll go past, and she doesn't realize she's completely deaf in one ear. She doesn't realize how loud she talks. We'll just go past the door. She goes, that poor man in that room, he's only in his 70s and he can't even walk. And then she and we go past another room. That poor lady in there, she can't get out of bed. They've got to push her in a wheelchair to have lunch. And we go, shh, mum, shh, shh. Like, okay. And she's like, and then she looks, and my mum's 4'6", and I'm like, Dad was 6 foot, and so I'm the same height as Dad, but she's 4'6", so she's like, one of my children walking beside me. And then she looks down at her little legs and then she stops and she gets this real grit look on her face and she kicks her legs and she goes, you keep walking, you legs, keep going. I don't want to be stuck in one of those beds. She understands. Yeah. And she's always, my dad went to the 6th grade, mum probably similar. They're born in 1929 and 1931. And, out in the country town sort of thing. And they've always worked extremely physically hard. They just always, and they were able to keep moving right to the, near the end. So it's very, very important, that exercise. Yeah. All right. Let's see what else I've got here. I know I've got plenty of other questions here for you. Where are we? I'm curious, breath work, is that something that you bring into your practices or not?
It's, I would say it's foundational. Absolutely. I don't believe there's a right way to breathe. I think every breath is ideally a response to the present, and every present moment is different. But I do believe that the whole of the body can be available to every breath. So, yes, the breath only fills the lungs, but we are 70% water. There is an inner ocean within the body. So when I breathe in, I feel that breath wave go down to the soles of my feet. I feel it up to the top of my head. I feel it down to my fingertips. There is this breath wave that travels through the body. And if it doesn't travel through the whole of the body, it indicates that there's a lattice work of tension that is impeding the breath wave. So it's really helpful to feel that and feel it as gently and as subtly as you can. And where there's a shadow in the body that the breath wave isn't moving through, to imagine the breath wave like an ocean wave washing up against a sandcastle. Every time it washes up against that consolidation, a little bit of it dissolves back into the sea, and a little bit more. And eventually you feel the breath wave move through the whole of the body. And, when I work with people, our culture has shut down the body to the breath in really specific ways. We've lost the breath in the back. My breath is primarily in my back. And talking from the front feels very shallow and thin. If I talk from the front, I'm talking sort of like this, and that's how my voice sounds. And if I allow the breath into my back, you can see it changes. And my sense is with the breath in the back, there is a sort of an embrace where I am inclusive rather than standing apart from. The pelvic floor I've spoken of already. The breath can be initiated by the pelvic floor, whether it's an in-breath or an out-breath. So it's not secondary, it's primary. And to feel the pelvic floor as the first thing in the body to release to the breath, there is an invitation to the whole of the body to release with it. And what we've done in our culture, we're such a headist, top-down culture. We've turned the breath into a top-down activity. So if somebody says to you, take a deep breath, your response is likely to push the breath as deep into the body as you can. And that takes muscular effort, and eventually the muscles fatigue and the breath goes shallow again. If you initiate the breath with a release of the pelvic floor, it's as though the breath is filling the body from the pelvic floor up. And it's just such a different grounding sensation from the top-down manner of breath we're used to. And to feel the breath in that way, and to feel the pelvic floor initiating the breath, it's as though the inclusiveness of the pelvic bowl, of the intelligence of the pelvic bowl, invites every cell in the body to join it in its release to the breath. The pelvic bowl, the intelligence being inclusive, being holistic, is so different from the intelligence of the head, which is exclusive. It's how it operates. We exclude strawberry from the category of vegetable. We look at something and pull it to pieces. It disassembles and understands parts, but it doesn't understand the whole. So it's only when our impulses arise from the pelvic bowl that we can remain in the wholeness of our being.
Yeah. And the things you were saying there about the breath, it made me start to think, like I said, 18 months ago, I started to go swimming. Prior to that, I'm a scuba instructor, so I'm very comfortable under the water. And once I learned to be comfortable and rely on the equipment and understand how it works, I did classes on pulling all the regulators apart, servicing it. And I got, so mechanically, it's like, yes, all this stuff works. I understand why I feel comfortable with it. And then now I teach people to scuba dive. Like I've done over 2,000 dives, but and I can go to the beach. We live in some of the most beautiful beaches on the planet that are a 20-minute drive from my house. And occasionally I have surfers on interviewing, and I'm going to name some of the beaches and they drool, So I can go there and I can go up to my waist or my chest in water and I can body surf in, and I'm very comfortable. But you take me out behind those waves where I can't touch and I no longer have a mask or snorkel, not a happy camper. I am so out of my comfort zone. I start to get panicky. So I just decided at 60 I was going to overcome this. So I started swimming. Well, what I found myself doing was I would start it in the 25-meter pool. I'd be swimming to the end, and the whole goal was to get from one end to the other. And my breathing was not good. And I'd touch the other end and grab on. So then I did half my breathing at the other end, getting over the swim. And I've listened to a lot of YouTube videos because I've tried to find a coach for me. And the first coach I had, she coached me for the first 2 lessons. She was probably 20. And she just thought, this guy, this is good. Like we teach children here. And it's very hard to find. I've asked many times. And I live in a city of 750,000 people, and we all go to the beach. It's a swimming mecca. But once you're of a certain age, no one wants to teach you to swim. So I've had to watch YouTube videos, and I've started to become more comfortable. I've started to learn to swim through the water, not on top of the water, which requires a lot less energy. And I've learned to breathe in a different way, like put my head in different positions that help. And instead of 2% of the time I was comfortable, now like probably 82% of the time I'm comfortable. I've advanced a lot in being comfortable in the water. And if someone said, oh, let's do a big breath hold and let's swim under the water and see how far we could go, I'm very comfortable with that because I'm under the water. I'm going to go as far as I can. I'll go till failure, like my mind tells me I'm out of air, and I'll pop up. But to stay on the surface and keep swimming where we have to, and I breathe every 3 strokes. It's just what I choose to do. If I get out of rhythm of that, it's the panic comes in, but it's very rare now to what it used to be, but it's still, if you want to use the term darkness, there's that bit of darkness. It's part of me, but I've integrated a lot of it, but there's this last bit that's got to be integrated. Well, and I don't know if it'll ever all be integrated, but there's still more to go. And, and when the 50-meter pool is not as busy, because sometimes there's 3 or 4 people in one lane, there's that many people go and swim there, and, you get in people's way and stuff. So yesterday I went in the middle of the day when it's quiet, and I got my own lane, and I'm happy, and off I go up and down. But the whole breathing, being comfortable breathing through the whole body, and always the first 2 or 3 laps I do, it's easy because I'm not fatigued at all. But then it's funny, lap say 4 to 7 is hard, like it's challenging, and then the laps after that are fine. You sort of get past a stage, and the breathing becomes more, I don't know, easier, just natural. It's a very recognizable thing for me every time I go, and I'm definitely getting a lot better. So, and I've had times when my feet have just cramped on me, like barely get off the end of the pool on the first lap, and one or both my feet will just cramp up, and I'm like, I know it's not a physical thing, it's something else. And but it's how important that breathing is. It's everything.
Yeah, and the panic, when it comes, is the biggest impediment to breath that there could be. The body's tightening up, and there's no room for the breath. It's how to let the body lengthen with the in-breath and lengthen with the out-breath. Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And I watch other swimmers near me, not all of them, but some of them, who are obviously been swimming for a long time, and they swim, they're doing double my speed, and it's so rhythmic, and it looks effortless. And you're like, wow, like how do they do that? And like you're saying, they're able to, when they inhale, there's no restriction for the air to come in and to go out. It's just so rhythmic, and the flow, and they're allowing the air to feel all the parts of the body that it needs to feel. There's not the restrictions, the constriction of the muscles, and the panic, and you're just making it exponentially worse so quickly by restricting the flow of the air in. It's become very, very recognizable for me. And I teach fire safety classes a couple of days a week because of my history as a professional firefighter years ago. And I'm always teaching in the class, how to remain calm, because half the people I teach are the wardens. They're going to be in charge of the emergency, whether it's a fire or an intruder or whatever it may be. I teach them, like, you're going to be ready for this. I'm preparing you mentally to go through the stages. We do this, we do this, we do this, we do this, and da 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 da. But you're not going to remember any of that if you're not calm. Put your hand up if you've ever formally been taught to remain calm, and very few hands go up, because it's not an average thing that the average workplace teach. So I spend 5 minutes and go through. I talk to them on breathing techniques. Breathing, like holding your breath in your chest, short rapid breaths in your chest, are not helpful. That is going to bring tunnel vision on. This is how we have to breathe. And as important as it is to do big full inhales, it's just as important to do big full exhales. Because I know on scuba, like, it's really easy as the instructor to tell if people aren't exhaling, because there's no bubbles. It gets obvious real quick. Because I've never once had to remind a student to inhale. They will. They'll bring it in and hold it. Let it out. So, Breathing gets very exact. If it's incorrect when you're on scuba, it gets obvious very quick. If you start and hold your breath, you start to become more buoyant and you start to head for the surface. So you've got to keep breathing to, as you exhale, you become a fractionally less buoyant, and so it's impossible to sit still. You can't. It doesn't matter who you are going to go fraction up and down constantly as you inhale, exhale, because of the buoyancy and um, positive and negative buoyancy with each breath. So, yeah, very, very good. All right. Where are we here with questions? So, me talking about my fears, occasionally I asked a guest, what's your greatest fear?
I mean, my greatest fear would be around my kids, Um, we have a granddaughter, just for them to be safe, which life isn't. So things happen, but there's I've never encountered any fear in the world like that children can bring up, and their well-being and their happiness.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a granddaughter and a grandson, and I can very much relate. And she's 13 now. She started getting bullied at a new school a while ago. So my son decided, all right, you're off to jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts classes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've taken her and picked her up a few times. And um, they sent a video a couple of days ago, and for 13, she's quite tall. And my son's standing there at home, and he's got one of those kick pads, and he's holding it up above his head. And she just lets go, and she kicked quite high, which was impressive, but the speed at which she kicked was like, it was scary. It was like, oh, grandpa's not going to tease you anymore. And this is a very feminine girl. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know what to say or do. I watched it like 10 times, and I'm like, did my son just feed that into AI and speed that up? Or did she really do that? That was the height of the kid with her long legs. It's, above his head. I got it. But it was lethal. And I'm like, oh, it's sad she has to learn this, but I guess I'm happy, and I'm just going to not tease her anymore.
Well, and she's coming into her body, and she's discovering her agency, and she's feeling more range for choices that she can make. It's all fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it is. Well, Philip, I have learnt a lot through listening to you here, listening to your books, your podcasts. I'm going to have all your contact details in the show notes for people. Apart from that sort of information, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd think, we do need to cover this? Is there anything else?
Not really. I just, for your Australian audience, I am hoping to come in early 2027 to, I've been 3 times, and it's been, the last time I was there was just before the lockdown from COVID. I made it home by the skin of my teeth. So it's, I'd love to, there's nothing like sharing the work in person. But if the odds are that not everyone would be able to get to a workshop, but I do have, all kinds of ways of experiencing work. Every time you come back to the body a little bit more, you're coming back to a different kind of intuitive intelligence that we've lost touch with in our culture largely. And as you say, it hits men particularly hard. So on my website, there are interviews with others, there are exercises, there's a free community that people can join, where lots of things are shared, and there's a membership as well as the courses, the membership. I've recorded over 300 practices, and the membership gives you access to those, so you can listen to them in your own time, on your own way. And every practice I offer is bringing back into relationship something that our culture has thrown into darkness.
Very interesting. Bringing back the things that have been hidden or concealed, or yeah, very much. Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned there about COVID. Part of why I'm doing this is that's one example of many times where there's been conflicting information. And I'm not about to put my hand up and say, this is right, follow this, listen to these people. My thing is, man, go into yourself, use the methods that Philip was taught, and decide for yourself what's right for you, because what's right for your neighbor mightn't be exactly what's right for you. So this is why I'm trying to get men to tap into their intuition, not into someone else's, so that they will know what's right for them, what decisions they should make as the world throws things at us, runs things past us. In whatever way it does, we know within ourselves how we should respond to it and how we should move forward. So it's, very, very important that we men develop these skills.
And to know what's right for you, to come into your own truth in that way. And at the same time, to know that your truth isn't necessarily right for anyone else.
Exactly.
So that,
it's yours, for you, for now. And it mightn't be for you in 2 years' time, or it might be an adapted version of it. Yeah, it's where you are now. Yeah, how the energy's flowing through you. Yeah, how the breath's flowing through you. Yeah, now. Yeah, exactly. Love it.
what your body most deeply knows.
Yes. Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for that. It's been a wonderful hour and a quarter or so. Awesome information for everyone listening. Thank you, Philip.
Such a pleasure, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.